I want to start by thanking my friends who are my family, and I want to thank my husband who has seen things he cannot unsee. I could not have survived anything without all of you. Thank you. So, like many others, when I had my first colonoscopy, I made a lot of jokes about it. And my particular jokes were, oh, they call the prep solution go lightly, but there was no going lightly about it, or, it'll probably be the best nap of my life and all that kind of thing. When I stopped laughing was when I was in line at the company cafeteria. I was actually in the grilled chicken sandwich line. My phone rang. I looked down. It was Vanderbilt. I took it. And they said that they had found a tumor in my rectum. And I know many in this audience have probably gotten that same phone call. And you know how you just stop hearing things after that. But I became very aware that I was in a public place, so I couldn't exactly lose it. So I tried to keep it to like one dramatic tear. And I saved losing it for when I was in my surgeon's office. So the surgeon explained to me that because of the location of the tumor, it was going to, when he removed it, destroy the firm seal that is needed for continence. So he told me that if I was going to make it to the toilet, I'd have about 30 seconds to a minute between feeling that urge and being to the toilet. So I started thinking about like how long it would take me to get from my desk to the toilet, from the movie theater seat to the toilet. And it became clear that the option that he laid out before me was going to be the one that happened, and that was going to be to have a colostomy. So I'm going to just stop right here and tell you what that is, because some folks may not know what that is. For me, it is an 1.25 inch piece of my bowel that comes through my abdominal wall by my belly button, and I have stool into a bag that I wear. And that has a huge amount of stigma. In fact, a 10-year-old boy killed himself over being made fun of it. And so this past week, his name was Seven Bridges. And so when I got that news, I was more comfortable dying of cancer than I was living with a colostomy, because you only hear terrible things about it. You know, everyone has some kind of story. One that was told to me was that there was a 90-year-old woman who ruined Christmas with her colostomy, and I actually had subsequently contacted that person and said, you need to retire that story. So anyway, I got some comfort from the surgeon, who said, you know what? I mean, I was just losing it. Couldn't get my breath, that hard cry where you can't even breathe. And I finally calmed down a little bit. And he says, listen to me. He says, I have patients of all kinds living with colostomies you wouldn't even know. He's like, the athletes, lawyers, business people, just like, it'll be fine. Believe me, this can happen. And I said, does anyone ever just say to you, thanks for the information, doc, and walk out the door and you never see him again? He says, no one as healthy and young as you. But still, I had to wonder, like, if I did this surgery, would I ever get in a swimming pool again? Would I ever travel fearlessly again? Would I ever have sex with my husband again? And spoiler alert, yes, and yes, honey. As a matter of fact, when you're going to get this surgery, you sit down with the stoma nurses, and they kind of get you ready for it. And I'm sitting there with this nurse, Marilyn. She looks like your grandma. She's like, all right, now, Miss Hall, you're going to have to maybe change your eating habits, reduce gas, and control your output. And here's things you shouldn't eat, and here's this. Thank you. She says, and, there's supplies you're going to need. You're going to need bags. You're going to need skincare stuff, stuff like that. Here's a catalog for that. We can help you order it. Thank you. She goes, and now there's some lifestyle things that you're going to have to think about. And one of them is, don't let anyone have sex with your stoma. And I was like, can we go back to that? And she said, don't let anyone have sexual contact with your stoma. So, I was like, wow, does that actually happen? She goes, I've seen it all in here. So I actually, in that moment, realized I was going from being, thinking I was to actually I was going to have a new organ that people were... I'd have to actually stop people from it, It was like, So anyway, that made me feel happier. But, colorectal cancer isn't all fun and games. We start in with the chemo, the radiation. Many in the audience have withstood that. You know how terrible it can be, and lose your hair, get you a wig. The radiation caused terrible diarrhea. That was awful. Treat all that. And then I go in after that, and it's time for that surgery. And I should also say that the diagnosis in the end ended up being stage 4 cancer with metastasis to the liver. So I'm going to have a pair of surgeries, but the first one is one called an APR, and basically they remove your rectum, they seal that, and then they create the stoma, which is the name of the organ that feeds the colostomy. Okay, so I get that surgery first, and I'm laying in the bed, and Vanderbilt being a teaching hospital, someone would come in and say, the chief resident of that little area would come in and say, Mrs. Hall, now, would you mind if some of the students came in and took a look at your incision? And I was just like, well, I want to help the kids, and I'm half in the bag on painkillers anyway, so sure, bring them in. And I swear to God, 9 students would be in looking at my butt every morning for 5 days. They'd roll over, and they're like, I am now so comfortable with people looking at my butt. I'll let you look at my butt right now if you want to look at it. When I had the liver resection, guess how many students came in? 2. Less interested. But anyway, so I went through all that, began my recovery, get my energy back, and what the oncologist told me is after everything, I have a 50-50 chance of still being alive in 2022. That is the 5-year survival rate for my particular kind of cancer. So I began to get real comfortable with dying and mortality. And I looked at Freud, and Freud says that only children understand mortality and death. That the older we get, the more in denial we become that we're going to die, and that leads to neurosis, and we don't live a full life because we're so afraid of death. And then I looked at D.L. Moody. He was an evangelist who lived in the 1800s. And he said, one day you will read in the papers that D.L. Moody of East Northfield is dead. Do not believe a word of it. For in that moment I will be more alive than I am now. And I love that. I just love it. And I want to believe that. So I begin to get comfortable with this, and I go to see the surgeon for the very last check of that incision. And I say, well, Doc, got a 50-50 shot from here on out. He says, you know what? People are always trying to put percentages on cancer. Oh, it's going to be 20% for this, 70% for that, 50% this or that. He's like, you know what? If I were you, I would just prepare to live. And you know what? That is a sea change in the way that I have approached things, that sentence that he said to me. Because I'm going to tell you what the gift of this is. You can make a t-shirt that says, live every day that it's your last. You can make some kind of seashore meme that says that. You can write a song lyric that says, live like you're dying. But if you haven't faced death, you can't live like you're dying. I would opine, that is my idea, or at least for me. I did not understand what that meant. And today, I understand that very well. So if I'm going to prepare to live, what's that life going to look like? So now it needs to be doing the most things for the most people that I can. And it's going to mean doing things I'm uncomfortable with. And it's going to mean saying yes to things like this very event tonight. And I thank you for coming to listen to me.